The first time someone called Sophie Bennett my wife, I nearly dropped a $500,000 pre-approval letter into a koi pond. We were standing in the backyard of a craftsman house in Willow Glen, the kind with white trim, blue hydrangeas, and a porch swing that looked like it had been designed specifically to make lonely men reconsider their life choices. An older woman in pearl earrings smiled at Sophie, then at me, then down at the open house brochure in my hand. "You two are adorable," she said. "Newlyweds?" I opened my mouth to correct her. Sophie beat me to it. She slipped her sunglasses onto the top of her head, gave the woman a smile calm enough to stop traffic, and said, "Not yet." Not yet. Two tiny words. That was all it took for my brain to forget every responsible adult thought I had ever had. My name is Ryan Brooks. I was 31 years old, a structural engineer, and until that Saturday afternoon, I believed I was a practical man. I measured load-bearing walls for a living. I trusted numbers. I read inspection reports for fun, which is something I try not to admit on first dates because I do still hope to be loved someday. Buying a house had been my big clean start. At least that was what I told people. The truth was less polished. 8 months earlier, I'd been engaged to a woman named Lacey, and 3 months before our wedding, she sat across from me in a restaurant and said, "You're stable, Ryan, but I don't want stable to be the best thing about my life." There are sentences that bruise quietly. That one did. So I sold the condo we had picked out together, moved into a one-bedroom apartment above a dental office, and started touring houses like I was searching for square footage, when really I was searching for proof that my future had not ended in a booth beside a basket of untouched breadsticks. Sophie was my realtor. She was 29, sharp as a tack, funny in a dry way that made me feel like I had to earn her laugh, and entirely too good at noticing the things I tried to hide. The first house she showed me had foundation cracks. The second had a kitchen so small I had to turn sideways beside the fridge. The third smelled like wet dog and ambition. At the fourth, I said, "Maybe I'm being too picky." Sophie looked at me over her clipboard. "Ryan, the last basement had a mushroom growing out of the wall. It had character. It had spores." That was the first time I laughed without feeling like I had to prove I was okay. After that, Saturday mornings became a routine. Coffee before tours. Her driving too fast while claiming she was efficient. Me pretending not to enjoy how she hummed old Motown songs when she parallel parked. Her teasing me because I brought a small flashlight to open houses. Me teasing her because she called every breakfast nook a little moment, like it had its own emotional biography. I tried very hard to keep it professional. That was difficult because Sophie had this way of walking through a house as if she could already see the life inside it. She'd stand in an empty dining room and say, "You'd put a big table here, nothing too fancy, the kind where people stay too long after dinner." Or she'd touch the banister and say, "This one's been loved, you can tell." I would nod like an intelligent buyer while privately thinking, I would like to be the kind of man who comes home to you describing a banister. Ridiculous, dangerous, not part of the mortgage process. The Willow Glen house was different from the others the moment we stepped inside. It wasn't the biggest, it wasn't the flashiest, but it had afternoon light pouring through the living room windows, built-in shelves around a brick fireplace, and a kitchen with green tile that should have looked outdated but somehow looked brave. Sophie watched me pause in the entryway. "Oh," she said softly. "What?" "You're doing the thing." "What thing?" "The thing where your face says, 'I am emotionally compromised by crown molding.'" "I'm evaluating." "You're in love with a breakfast nook." "It has excellent proportions." "It has curtains with lemons on them." "Don't speak about her that way." Sophie laughed then, really laughed, and I turned too quickly toward the sound. That was the mistake, because she was standing in a strip of sunlight, wearing a cream blouse under a navy blazer, her hair pinned back. Except for one loose piece near her cheek, and for one stupid, honest second, I forgot the house. I forgot the inspection checklist. I forgot the woman who had left because stable wasn't enough. All I saw was Sophie, smiling at me like she knew exactly what I was thinking and was deciding whether to let me survive it. "You're staring," she said. "No, I'm assessing natural light." "On my face? It's a thorough assessment." Her smile tilted. Careful, Mr. Brooks. Compliments can affect negotiation strategy. I'll keep them structurally sound. She moved past me toward the kitchen, close enough that her sleeve brushed my arm. It was nothing. It was fabric. It still stayed there, somehow, after she walked away. The open house was crowded. Couples with strollers. A man in a fleece vest talking too loudly about cash offers. A young woman FaceTiming her mother from the pantry. The seller's agent floated around with business cards and the smile of someone who had already smelled a bidding war. Sophie guided me through the rooms with her usual confidence, but I noticed she was quieter than normal. In the upstairs hallway, I found her looking into the smallest bedroom. What? I asked. She shrugged. This would make a good office. You sound disappointed by that. No, just... She leaned against the doorframe. Some houses ask for noise, you know? Shoes by the door, someone burning pancakes, bad singing from another room. I looked at her profile. That sounds nice, I said. It does. Her voice had changed. Not sad exactly. More like she had accidentally touched something tender. I should have asked her about it. Instead, because I was a coward with a mortgage pre-approval, I said, "For the record, my pancake game is adequate." She looked at me. Adequate. Consistent. That is the saddest dating profile I've ever heard. I also own a label maker. Stop, I'm overwhelmed. We were still smiling when we went into the backyard. That was where the older woman in pearls decided we looked like newlyweds, and Sophie said, "Not yet." The woman clapped one hand to her chest. "Oh, forgive me, I just assumed. You have that look." I wanted to ask, what look? I also wanted to run directly into the hydrangeas and hide until interest rates dropped. Sophie did not blush. That was the impressive part. She stood there with her brochure tucked against her chest, composed and bright-eyed, as if she had not just tossed a match into a dry field. I finally managed, "We're not." Sophie's heel touched mine under the patio table. Not hard, just enough, a warning or a dare. The older woman's husband wandered over with 2 lemonade cups. Honey, leave them alone. When people are that happy, you don't interrogate them. Happy? I looked at Sophie, she looked at me. For a moment, neither of us corrected him. Then the seller's agent appeared at the sliding glass door and called, "Sophie, Ryan? Could I speak with you both in the kitchen?" Sophie's smile faded, just a fraction. We followed her inside. The kitchen had suddenly gone quiet in that way rooms do when too many strangers are pretending not to listen. The seller's agent, a polished woman named Marcia, lowered her voice. "I should tell you something before you write an offer," she said. "The owner is very attached to this house. His wife passed last year. They raised their children here. He's not only looking at price." Sophie straightened. "What is he looking at?" Marcia glanced between us. "A buyer who'll love it," she said. "A couple, ideally. Someone who wants a real home, not a flip, not a rental." I felt Sophie go still beside me. I knew what I should say. I should say, "We're not a couple. I'm just the buyer. She's my realtor. Simple, honest, clean." But before I could, Marcia smiled warmly and added, "And after seeing you two in the yard, I think you may be exactly what he's hoping for." Sophie turned her head toward me, her expression unreadable. Then, under the kitchen island where no one else could see, her fingers brushed mine once. Not an accident. Not professional. A question. And suddenly the house, the offer, the past, the future, all of it narrowed down to the space between her hand and mine. I did not take Sophie's hand. Not because I didn't want to, because I wanted to so badly it startled me. Her fingers rested beside mine under the kitchen island, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her skin without touching it. Marcia was still talking. Seller's timeline, offer deadline, sentimental value, but her voice blurred into background noise. Sophie's eyes stayed on me. There was a question there. Not, "Will you lie?" Something more dangerous. "Will you step toward me if I ask?" I slid my hand away. Sophie's face changed so quickly most people would have missed it. A tiny shuddering. A professional smile returning like a curtain dropping after a show. "Thank you, Marcia," she said smoothly. "Ryan will consider all factors before deciding." Ryan. Not we. Not my husband. Not yet. Ryan. I hated the sound of my own name in her business voice. We left the house 10 minutes later, neither of us saying much. Sophie walked ahead of me down the front path, keys in hand, shoulders squared. The sun was still bright, the hydrangeas still cheerful, the porch swing still smugly romantic. At her car, she clicked the unlock button. I said, "Sophie." She paused, one hand on the door handle. "You don't have to explain." That's usually what people say when they very much expect an explanation. "I'm your realtor." "I know." "And that seller's agent was making assumptions." "I know that too. And I shouldn't have said, 'not yet.'" Her mouth tightened. It was unprofessional. It was funny. It was reckless. It was memorable. She looked at me then, and some of the stiffness left her expression. "Ryan." I leaned back against the passenger door because standing upright suddenly required too much coordination. "For the record, I didn't move my hand because I was rejecting you." Her eyes flicked to mine. "I moved it because if I'd taken your hand in that kitchen, I wouldn't have been pretending." The street went quiet around us. A cyclist rolled past. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice and then apparently reconsidered. Sophie's grip loosened on her keys. "Oh," she said. It was the smallest word, but it held everything I had not been brave enough to say for 6 Saturday mornings. I tried to smile. That sounded smoother in my head. No, it sounded... She exhaled, glancing away. "Dangerous." "Bad dangerous?" "Commission board dangerous." I laughed, and she did too, but hers faded first. She opened the driver's door, then stopped. "Coffee?" "We already had coffee." "I know." She looked at me over the roof of the car. "This would be different coffee." Different coffee. Any structural engineer worth his license could identify a load-bearing phrase. We drove to a little cafe 3 blocks away and sat outside under an orange umbrella that made Sophie's skin glow warm and impossible to ignore. She took off her blazer and draped it over the back of her chair. Without it, she looked less like the woman who could win a bidding war through eye contact, and more like someone who might kick off her shoes at the end of a long day and admit she was tired. I liked both versions too much. She stirred her iced coffee with a paper straw until the ice clinked. "We should talk about the obvious problem." "You mean the lemon curtains?" "Ryan." "Right, the ethics. I represent you. You are my client. There are rules. I like rules. I've noticed. I also like you." Her straw stopped moving. There, no jokes, no escape hatch, no inspection contingency. Just the truth sitting between us in broad daylight. Sophie looked down at her drink, but not before I saw the color rise in her cheeks. "I like you too," she said quietly. The words landed somewhere in my chest and stayed there. "But," she added, "cruel word, necessary word." She folded her hands on the table. I don't date clients." "So I fire you?" Her eyes widened. "No. That was fast? Because you need representation and I'm good at my job." "You're terrifyingly good at your job." "Thank you." Her smile flickered. "And because if you fired me today, then asked me out tomorrow, it would still feel like we were cheating the timeline. The timeline has lemon curtains. The timeline is not the issue." "What is?" She leaned back, studying me. "I don't want to be your rebound house." I blinked. She winced immediately. "That came out harsher than I meant." "No." I looked down at my hands. It came out accurate enough to hurt. "Ryan, my ex said I was stable like it was an insult. I hadn't meant to say it. Not there. Not with traffic hissing by and foam melting in my coffee. But Sophie had a way of making silence feel less safe than honesty. Since then, I've been trying to build a life so solid, no one could call it boring and mean it." Her face softened. "And today," I continued, "I walked into that house and thought maybe I wanted it. Then that woman called you my wife, and for about 3 seconds I wanted that more." Sophie did not move. I regretted nothing and everything. "That is a lot to put on a breakfast nook," she said at last. I laughed once, rough and relieved. Then she reached across the table and touched my wrist. It wasn't much, just her thumb resting lightly over my pulse. But it felt more intimate than the almost handhold in the kitchen because this time no one was watching. No offer strategy could explain it away, and Sophie was looking straight at me. I don't want to be a fantasy you use to prove someone else wrong, she said. You're not. You don't know that yet. I know enough to want to find out. Her thumb moved once, gently, as if she could feel my answer under my skin. I want to find out too, she admitted. The cafe noise seemed to dim around us. A car horn honked. The espresso machine shrieked inside. I barely heard either. So, what do we do? I asked. We keep the house professional. No fake couple act. No sentimental letter implying I'm choosing nursery paint. Shame. I had a whole paragraph about your commitment to lemon-themed textiles. Delete it. Heartless. And after the transaction is done, she swallowed. If you still want different coffee, you can ask me. If? Her mouth curved. Confidence is attractive. Overconfidence lowers resale value. I leaned forward. Sophie, after the transaction is done, I'm asking you to dinner. That wasn't a question. I'm practicing. She smiled into her cup, and that smile felt like a signed addendum. We spent the next hour drafting an offer on the house with the green kitchen tile. Not as a couple, not as a performance. Just me, a man who wanted a home, and Sophie, the woman who kept catching me looking at her when I should have been initialing documents. When I wrote the buyer's letter, I told the truth. I wrote about the light in the living room, the built-ins, the porch swing. I wrote that I wanted a place where my friends would linger after dinner, where pancakes could be adequate and still appreciated, where a quiet man might learn that stable was not the same thing as empty. Sophie read it twice. Then she looked at me with bright eyes and said, "Don't change a word." On the walk back to her car, our shoulders brushed once. This time, neither of us moved away. Our offer was accepted on Tuesday at 8:17 p.m. I know the exact time because I was eating cereal over my sink when Sophie called, and the spoon froze halfway to my mouth. "Congratulations, homeowner adjacent," she said. I set the bowl down too hard. Milk jumped onto the counter. "We got it?" "You got it." I heard the smile in her voice and had to grip the edge of the sink like the floor had tilted. "You sound calm," I said. "I am a consummate professional." "You're smiling." "I smile professionally." "You're doing that happy exhale thing." Silence. Then she said, softer, "I really wanted you to have this one." There it was again, that invisible line between her job and whatever was growing beneath it. I leaned against the counter. "Thank you. You wrote a good letter. You told me not to change a word. Because I'm wise. And terrifyingly good at your job. Also true. We were quiet for a moment. Not awkward. Worse. Tender. Then Sophie cleared her throat. "Inspection is Friday morning, 9 sharp. Bring your tiny flashlight." It's not tiny, it's compact. It has the emotional presence of a keychain. It's seen things. "So have I, Ryan. Good night." But she didn't hang up right away. Neither did I. I stood in my small apartment above the dental office, listening to her breathe through the phone, and wished there were not rules, contracts, ethics, timing, history, an entire adult obstacle course between wanting and having. "Sophie?" "Yes?" "I'm still asking you to dinner." Her answer came like a smile in the dark. "I'm still planning to say yes." Friday arrived with fog, damp grass, and an inspector named Herb who looked at every house like it had personally disappointed him. Sophie met me on the porch with 2 coffees balanced in one hand and a folder tucked under her arm. "For me?" I asked, taking one. "For your emotional support flashlight." She prefers oat milk. I'm not indulging her. The porch swing creaked in the breeze behind us. For a second we stood there shoulder to shoulder, looking at the door that might become mine. "You nervous?" she asked. "Yes." "About the inspection?" "That too." She turned her head. "What else?" I watched a bead of condensation slide down my coffee cup. "About wanting things again." Sophie's teasing expression softened into something that made my chest ache. "That's not a bad sign," she said. "It feels like standing under something heavy and hoping it holds." Structural metaphor, very on brand. "I'm a limited man." "No." She said it quickly, firmly. "You're not." I looked at her then. There were people who complimented like they were tossing coins into a fountain. Sophie was not one of them. When she said something, she meant it, and the meaning stayed. Her hand shifted slightly at her side, fingers brushing mine. This time, I did not move away. Neither did she. We stood like that for 3 seconds too long, barely touching, until Herb opened the front door from inside and announced, "Attic access is weird." Sophie stepped back first, but she was smiling. "Romance is dead," I murmured. "Blame Herb." For 2 hours, we followed Herb through the house while he frowned at gutters, outlets, crawlspace vents, and one suspicious patch of ceiling above the laundry room. Sophie took notes, asked smart questions, and occasionally shot me looks whenever I whispered dramatic commentary. When Herb tested the garbage disposal, I leaned close and said, "If this fails, I'm walking." Sophie whispered back, "Over a disposal?" "I need standards. You brought a flashlight the size of a lipstick." Our relationship has taken a hurtful turn. Her pen stilled. I realized what I'd said at the exact same moment she did. Our relationship. Her eyes lifted to mine. The laundry room suddenly felt very small, warm from the dryer vent, smelling faintly of lemon cleaner and old wood. Sophie was close enough that I could see a tiny fleck of gold in her left eye. She did not correct me. Instead, she said, "It hasn't started yet." "No, no," her voice dropped. "But I think about it." Every nerve in my body paid attention. "What do you think about?" Her gaze flicked briefly to my mouth before returning to my eyes. "Different coffee," she said. "That's all? And dinner?" "Specific dinner?" "I'm open to proposals. I make adequate pancakes. I'm trying to be attracted to you, Ryan. Help me." I laughed under my breath and she smiled, but neither of us moved back. Then Herb shouted from the kitchen, "This faucet pressure is frankly emotional." Sophie closed her eyes. "I'm going to murder him." That would complicate escrow. Worth it. By noon, the inspection was done. The house had issues, but not deal breakers. Old water heater, minor roof repair, one window that refused to open because it apparently believed in boundaries. Herb left us in the dining room with a promise to send the full report. Sunlight fell across the empty floorboards. Dust floated in the quiet. The house felt different without other buyers in it. Less like a prize, more like a possibility. Sophie walked to the built-ins and ran her fingers along the shelf. "You'll put books here?" "Some." "And framed photos?" "I don't have many." "You will." The certainty in her voice made something in me loosen. I joined her by the shelves. "What would you put here?" She looked surprised. "Me? If it were yours." She hesitated, then touched the lower cabinet handle. "Cookbooks I mostly ignore. A blue vase my grandmother gave me. A terrible ceramic bird I bought at a flea market because it looked offended." An offended bird? It spoke to me. Concerning. "And maybe," she smiled faintly, "a bowl by the door for keys. I always lose mine." "I've noticed. You pat your pockets before every showing." "You notice that?" "I notice a lot." The words came out quieter than I intended. Sophie's hand remained on the cabinet. Mine rested inches away. The room held us there. "I notice when you pretend to be fine," she said. I swallowed. "I notice when you make jokes so people won't ask where it hurts." Her voice was gentle but steady. "And I notice that you always step aside to let me through a doorway, even when you're distracted." I tried to smile. "That one's just manners." "No." She turned toward me. "That one's you." Something in her face undid me. The openness, the risk, the way she was reaching without touching. "I'm afraid," I admitted. "Of me?" "Of making you responsible for fixing something you didn't break." Her eyes softened. "I don't want to fix you." "What do you want?" Sophie looked at me for a long moment. Then she stepped closer. "I want to know you when you're not trying to prove anything." My breath caught. The distance between us narrowed to almost nothing. I could smell her perfume, light and clean, mixed with coffee and paper, and the old house dust clinging to both of us. I wanted to kiss her. More than I wanted the house. More than I wanted to be careful. Her gaze dropped again to my mouth, and this time she didn't hide it. Sophie, I whispered. Her phone rang. We both froze. She let out a shaky laugh and stepped back, pressing a hand to her forehead. I swear, if that's Herb. But when she looked at the screen, her expression changed. Professional again, guarded. It's Marcia, she said. I nodded, still trying to remember how lungs worked. Sophie answered. Hi, Marcia. She listened, her brow furrowed. Then she looked at me. What is it? I asked when she hung up. The seller wants to meet you before inspection negotiations. Is that normal? Not typical, but not unheard of. She tucked her phone away. He read your letter. He wants to talk in person. Okay. There's one more thing. Sophie's mouth pressed into a line. Marcia said he asked if your wife would be coming too. The word hung between us. Wife. The mistake that had started everything. I waited for Sophie to retreat behind the rules, to remind me again what we were not. Instead, she lifted her chin. We'll tell the truth, she said, and if that cost you the house, I'm sorry. I stepped closer, not touching her this time, but choosing her all the same. I don't want a house I have to lie about you to get. Her eyes shone. Ryan. And just so we're clear, I said, when this is over, I don't want not yet to stay a joke. Sophie's breath caught, and for one suspended second, the empty dining room felt full of every life we hadn't lived yet. Then she smiled. Small. Brave. Mine to hope for. Then don't make me wait too long, she said. The seller's name was Arthur Bell, and he arrived at the house carrying a cardboard box and wearing a tweed jacket entirely wrong for the warm afternoon. He was in his late 70s, tall but stooped, with silver hair combed neatly back and eyes that looked as if they had spent the last year learning how to be lonely. Marcia came with him, hovering like a nervous stage manager. Sophie and I stood in the living room by the fireplace. Not too close, not far apart either. Arthur shook my hand first. You're Ryan. Yes, sir. Good letter. Thank you. Then his gaze moved to Sophie. And this is? Before Marcia could rescue us, before the old misunderstanding could grow another inch, I said, This is Sophie Bennett. She's my realtor. Arthur's expression shifted. Marcia suddenly became fascinated by the seller disclosures in her folder. Sophie stepped forward and offered her hand. It's nice to meet you, Mr. Bell. He looked at her hand, then at me. Not your wife? No, I said. The word felt like a door closing, but not the right one. Arthur took Sophie's hand anyway. That's a shame. Sophie gave him a small smile. Depends who you ask. His eyebrows lifted. I coughed once into my fist. Sophie's mouth twitched, and the room, which had been ready to turn awkward, softened instead. Arthur walked slowly to the fireplace and rested one hand on the mantel. My Evelyn used to put Christmas cards here, too many of them. People she hadn't seen in 30 years, the mailman, her dentist, a woman who once complimented her casserole in 1989. She sounds loyal, Sophie said. She was excessive. His voice warmed. I miss excessive. None of us spoke. He turned to me. Marcia said you were a couple. We didn't tell her that, Sophie said gently. There was a misunderstanding at the open house. Arthur nodded as if he had expected the answer but not liked it. I don't care much about money at this point, he said. My children do, but that's because they're sensible and I failed to raise them with enough sentiment. I wanted this house to go to someone building a life. Together, ideally. I looked at the floorboards, at the sunlight stretching across them. I understand, I said, and if that changes your decision, I won't blame you. But I don't want to pretend Sophie is something she isn't. Sophie's gaze moved to me. I felt it before I saw it. I added, especially because what she is matters. Arthur studied me. And what is she? My heart gave one hard, foolish knock. My realtor, I said. My friend. And the woman I'm trying very hard to be patient about. Marcia made a small noise behind her folder. Sophie went still beside me. Arthur looked between us, then barked a laugh so sudden it startled all of us. Well, he said, that's better than half the married people I know. Sophie pressed her lips together, fighting a smile. Arthur pointed at me. Patience is useful, cowardice is not. I'm learning the difference. Good. He moved toward the built-ins and picked up the cardboard box he had brought. Evelyn collected things, not valuable things, just ours. He opened the flaps and pulled out a ceramic bird with a spectacularly offended expression. Sophie sucked in a breath. I turned to her. No. Her eyes lit. Ryan, you already have one? No, but I told you. It spoke to you? It's yelling now. Arthur looked delighted. Evelyn called him Harold, hated everybody but her. Sophie accepted the bird carefully as if it were crystal. He's perfect. He's appalling, I said. He has presence. He has legal concerns. Arthur smiled at Sophie. Keep it here if Ryan buys the place. A house needs one ridiculous thing. Only one? She asked. His smile softened. At least one. By the time we discussed repairs, the air had changed. Arthur agreed to credit the water heater and split the roof repair. The stubborn window, he declared, had always been dramatic and refused to apologize for it. When he left, he paused on the porch and looked back once. Don't make the house too quiet, he told me. Then his eyes shifted to Sophie. And don't make her wait forever. After he and Marcia drove away, Sophie and I stayed on the porch with Harold, the offended ceramic bird sitting between us on the swing. For several seconds, neither of us said anything. Then Sophie whispered, I cannot believe you told a grieving widower you're trying to be patient about me. I panicked with honesty. That's your worst kind of panic. I have several. She laughed softly, but her eyes were bright. I leaned against the porch post. Did I make things harder? No. She looked down at Harold. You made them real. There was that word again. Real. It had weight. It had walls and windows and room for old grief and new chances. Sophie touched Harold's beak with one finger. He gave me the bird. I noticed. I mean, the ceramic bird. I was choosing maturity by not making that joke. Were you? No. Her smile faded into something gentler. Thank you for telling the truth in there. I meant it. The friend part? All of it. She looked up. The porch felt suddenly separate from the street, from escrow, from rules and signatures. The swing creaked in the breeze. A leaf skittered across the steps. Sophie stood close enough that if I reached out, my fingers would find hers. So I did. Slowly. Clearly. Giving her every chance to move away. She didn't. Her hand slipped into mine like it had been waiting for the shape of it. Not under a kitchen island, not hidden, not almost. This was on a porch in daylight with a ridiculous ceramic bird as witness. Sophie looked at our joined hands, then back at me. This is not professional. No. This is a terrible idea. Probably. I'm still your realtor. For a few more weeks. Her thumb brushed across my knuckles. You're very calm for a man making a terrible idea worse. I'm not calm. No? My pulse is doing something Herb would describe as frankly emotional. She laughed and the sound pulled me closer. I didn't kiss her. Not yet. Not while the line still existed, thin as paper, but real. But I lifted her hand and pressed my lips to her knuckles. Sophie's breath caught. The gesture was old-fashioned, restrained, absurdly small. It still changed the whole porch. When I lowered her hand, she didn't take it back. Dinner, she said softly. The day after closing. Yes. A real date. Not coffee with paperwork nearby. No paperwork. And no talking about roof credits. Can I mention water pressure? Only if you want to dine alone. I smiled. Understood. Her gaze dropped to my mouth for one dangerous second. Then she stepped back, still holding my hand, until distance forced her fingers free. I should go, she said. You should. Neither of us moved. Finally, she picked up Harold and tucked him under one arm. I'm keeping him safe until closing. You're stealing my house, bird. He chose me. Everyone does eventually. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Sophie stared at me, then smiled with a softness that nearly undid all my careful restraint. "Careful, Ryan," she said. "Confidence is attractive. Overconfidence lowers resale value, I remember." "Good." She walked to her car, then turned back at the sidewalk. "For what it's worth," she called. "I'm trying very hard to be patient, too." Then she drove away with an offended ceramic bird in her passenger seat, leaving me on the porch of a house that wasn't mine yet, wanting a woman who wasn't mine yet either. But for the first time in a long time, not yet didn't feel like a joke. It felt like a promise. Closing took 27 days, 3 roof estimates, 1 argument with my lender over a missing signature, and 6 increasingly unprofessional thoughts every time Sophie texted me. Mostly her texts were responsible. Final walkthrough Thursday at 4, wire instructions verified. Do not trust random emails, bring ID to signing. But sometimes at night, when the paperwork was done and the waiting felt longer than escrow itself, she sent other things. "Harold is judging your paint samples." Then a photo of the ceramic bird sitting beside 3 shades of blue. I wrote back, "He prefers the middle one. He has depth." She replied, "He said your flashlight lacks charisma." I stared at my phone in bed like a man receiving poetry. On the morning I signed the final papers, Sophie met me outside the title office in a pale green dress and a denim jacket, looking less like my realtor than the beginning of every good decision I had ever been afraid to make. She held out a pen. "For the final signature." I brought one. "This one works better." "It's a pen. It's my lucky pen." I took it. "How many people have bought houses with this?" 14. "How many fell in love with their realtor?" Her eyes met mine. "Just one," she said. My hand tightened around the pen. Inside, I signed my name approximately 800 times. Sophie sat beside me, close enough that her knee brushed mine under the conference table. When the title officer left to make copies, she leaned over and whispered, "You're officially almost insufferable." "I'm a homeowner. Almost. I'm homeowner adjacent with upgraded confidence." "That's worse." I turned my head. She was inches away, smiling, nervous beneath it. "Tomorrow night," I said. Her smile softened. "Tomorrow night?" When the recording came through the next afternoon, Sophie called me. "Congratulations, Ryan," she said, and this time her voice trembled a little. "It's yours." I stood in the empty living room of the house with the green kitchen tile, keys in my palm, sunlight across my shoes. "No," I said. There was a pause. "No? It's mine, but I don't want it to be only mine." Sophie went quiet. I closed my eyes, suddenly aware of my own heartbeat. "I'm not proposing ownership of anything, or rushing, or putting pressure on you. I just mean, this house felt like a future when you were standing in it." Her breath caught softly through the phone. "I'll be there at 7, she said. Our first date started on my porch because I had no dining table yet. I had 2 folding chairs, takeout Thai food, a bottle of wine Arthur Bell had left, with a note that said, "Don't make the house too quiet," and Harold on the porch rail looking offended by romance in general. Sophie arrived carrying a blue vase. "For the built-ins," she said. I looked at it, then at her. "You remembered." "I notice a lot." She stepped inside, and for a moment we just stood in the entryway together. No clients, no contracts, no reason to pretend the air between us wasn't charged. "You're off duty," I said. "I am. And I'm not your client." "No." "So if I tell you that you look beautiful, it won't affect negotiation strategy?" Her cheeks colored. "It might affect dinner strategy." "Good." I took one step closer. She didn't move back. "I've wanted to kiss you in this house since the laundry room," I said. Her eyes warmed. "Only since then?" "The kitchen, technically." "Amateur. I was in trouble at the breakfast nook." I laughed, and then her hands found the front of my shirt, light but certain. That was all the permission I needed. I kissed her carefully at first because wanting something for weeks teaches a man reverence. Sophie rose onto her toes, her fingers curling into the fabric at my chest, and kissed me back like patience had been a locked door, and we had finally found the key. It wasn't dramatic. No thunder, No swelling music. Just her mouth soft against mine rests, her smile breaking through halfway, my hand at her waist, and the quiet house around us seeming to exhale. When we parted, she rested her forehead against my chin. "Worth the wait?" I asked. She nodded. "But don't get smug." "I would never." "You absolutely would. I'm evolving. You bought a label maker." "For us." Her eyes lifted to mine. "Us." This time, neither of us flinched from the word. Dinner went cold twice because we kept stopping to kiss in places that would later become ordinary. Against the kitchen counter beside the built-ins on the porch steps while Harold glared down from above. Sophie told me about her grandmother, about why she became a realtor, about how she loved giving people keys because it felt like handing them proof they could begin again. I told her I was still scared sometimes. She laced her fingers through mine on the porch swing. "Me too," she said. That was the moment I knew. Not because she was fearless, because she wasn't, and she stayed. 6 months later, the house was no longer quiet. The built-ins held my books, Sophie's blue vase, 3 framed photos, and Harold in a position of undeserved honor. The kitchen smelled like garlic, coffee, and occasionally pancakes that had improved from adequate to promising. Sophie still had her own apartment, but one drawer in my bedroom was hers, then two, then a toothbrush appeared beside mine as if placed there by fate and not by a woman who smiled when I noticed. By the following spring, Arthur came over for dinner. Sophie made lemon chicken in honor of the old curtains, and he sat at the table I had finally bought, looking around at the candles, the mismatched chairs, the flowers in Evelyn's old vase, and Sophie laughing at something I said. "She would have liked this," he told me quietly. I looked across the room at Sophie. She was barefoot in my kitchen, arguing with Harold because she claimed his energy was disrespectful to guests. "So do I said. Later that night, after Arthur left, Sophie and I sat on the porch swing under a warm, dark sky. Her head rested on my shoulder. My hand covered hers. "You know," she said, "that woman at the open house was very confident. The newlywed woman? She changed my life." Sophie tilted her face up. She had good instincts. I kissed her, slow and sure, with the house glowing behind us and the porch swing creaking beneath us. Not yet had become yes in tiny steps. A hand held in daylight, a first date, a drawer, a home full of noise. And as Sophie's fingers tightened around mine, I realized stable had never been the opposite of love. Sometimes stable was the place love finally felt safe enough to stay. What would you have done if someone at an open house mistook your realtor for your wife, and she smiled and said, "Not yet"? Have you ever had a stranger accidentally say something that changed everything? Tell me your story in the comments. And for those who'd like to be a little closer to us, we've opened memberships where you'll get shorter exclusive stories every week with no ads. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.